Have you ever heard of a leader who was born with leprosy, but remained tough and courageous in leading the Kingdom of Jerusalem in the Crusades era? Baldwin IV, a talented and brave ruler, but his life was colored by his struggle against leprosy, which forced him to lead the Kingdom of Jerusalem with physical limitations. Its short, but meaningful history made it one of the most prominent figures in the Crusades and Christian empires of the Middle East in the 12th century. So let's talk more about how Baldwin IV was able to rule with courage and wisdom despite his life-threatening illness. Baldwin IV was born in 1161 in Jerusalem, a holy city that was at that time the capital of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. His father was Mamluk I, king of the Kingdom of Jerusalem at the time, who was of French origin, and his mother was Agnes of Courtenay, daughter of Jocelyn II, Count of Edessa, which was one of the minor kingdoms formed during the First Crusade. Baldwin IV was the eldest son of the couple and later became the heir to the throne of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Baldwin IV's childhood was quite interesting as he grew up amidst unusual circumstances. As the king's son, Baldwin IV was protected by an army of guards and surrounded by powerful men. However, his life changed when he was diagnosed with leprosy at a very young age, around 9 years old. The incident began when Baldwin and his friends were playing. They try to hurt each other's hand feelings, but Baldwin feels no pain. His personal companion, William, a historian from Tyre, noticed an abnormality in Baldwin's skin. However, at that time the symptoms were not diagnosed as leprosy. Until several years passed, the disease was increasingly showing symptoms that lead to leprosy, and Baldwin was diagnosed with leprosy. The disease that Baldwin IV suffered from was leprosy, which was deadly and highly contagious, for which people affected by this disease had to be exiled from society. Baldwin IV was isolated from his peers and other family members for fear of contracting the disease. However, this did not make him feel hopeless or depressed. In contrast, Baldwin IV continued to study and prepare to become king. After the death of his father, King Almeric I, on the 11th of July 1174 from dysentery after returning from an expedition to Damascus, Baldwin was crowned the new king of Jerusalem on the 15th of July 1174, when he was 13 years old. Due to his young age, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was eventually ruled by two regents in turn. The first to the throne was Miles of Plancy, a French nobleman who held power unofficially. However, he did not rule long and was succeeded by his father's cousin, Raymond III of Tripoli, who also reigned as regent. After waiting for several years, Baldwin is finally ready to lead the Kingdom of Jerusalem. While leading Jerusalem, Baldwin IV was known for his ability to manage the government of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. He pursued a just and wise policy, and strengthened the unity among the Christian aristocrats who had often clashed in the past. And what is familiar is, Baldwin IV was known for his policy of tolerance towards Muslims, especially towards Salahuddin Ayyubi, who was considered one of the greatest enemies of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Despite this, Baldwin IV and Salahuddin Ayyubi respected each other and even formed a friendship at the end of Baldwin IV's life. Well, please explain how can Baldwin, King of Jerusalem, be able to have good relations with a Muslim who is the main enemy of his kingdom? So, when Baldwin IV became King of Jerusalem, when Christian power in the Middle East was in decline due to the crusade that had been going on for 60 years. By that time, the Christian powers had lost several important cities, including the city of Ascalon, which was taken over by Muslim armies in 1153. In addition, the Kingdom of Jerusalem faced threats from various factions of Christian factions, as well as attacks from Muslim armies led by Salahuddin Ayyubi. At that time, Salahuddin Ayyubi was still a general under Nur ad-Din Zangi, the ruler of Syria, who was a close ally of the Muslim Empire. Upon becoming king, Baldwin IV immediately began a series of military campaigns to strengthen the defenses of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Salahuddin Ayyubi also strengthened his troops to attack Jerusalem. But unlike before, Salahuddin chose to postpone his attack on Jerusalem and chose to negotiate with Baldwin IV. When the two leaders meet, they respect each other and even form a friendship. Baldwin IV appreciated Salahuddin Ayyubi's policy of tolerance and justice in treating Christians living in his territory. Meanwhile, Salahuddin Ayyubi appreciated Baldwin IV's courage and military ability, and considered him a worthy opponent. After that meeting, Baldwin IV and Salahuddin Ayyubi continued to establish diplomatic relations and held secret meetings which were kept secret. The good relations between Salahuddin Ayyubi and Baldwin IV had a major impact on the Crusades. First of all, even though they were polar opposites in the war, the good relationship between the two helped reduce the intensity of the fighting and bloodshed. The two leaders respected each other and even exchanged gifts at times, such as when Baldwin gave Saladin a horse. This friendship helped improve Baldwin IV's health condition. Historically, Salahuddin even provided Baldwin IV with a doctor, who was able to provide the necessary treatment and significantly improve his condition. However, despite initially having good relations, Baldwin IV and Salahuddin Ayyubi were eventually involved in a war between the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the Muslim forces led by Salahuddin Ayyubi. Factors causing the war between the two sides include political ambitions, territorial rivalries, and of course, religious differences. Baldwin IV wanted to maintain and expand the power of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, while Salahuddin Ayyubi intended to unite the Islamic world under one strong government. In addition, the two competed for control of strategic areas in the Middle East, including holy cities such as Jerusalem, Bethlehem and Nazareth. Religious differences also strengthen national and identity sentiments, and of course the war between the two parties is seen more as a religious war. After the war against Salahuddin Ayyubi heated up, Baldwin IV experienced a decline in his health because his leprosy was getting worse. Leprosy is an infectious disease that affects the skin, nerves and mucosa. This disease can cause tissue damage and reduce the body's ability to respond to infection. In Baldwin IV, the disease deprived him of the ability to directly command troops as the affected hands and feet became numb. In order to maintain the stability of the kingdom, Baldwin IV handed over his powers to his cousin, Guy de Lusignan, in 1183. However, Baldwin IV still retained control of many important governmental decisions, as Guy de Lusignan was not always considered to have the leadership qualities needed in the current situation. Baldwin IV also continued to strengthen relations between the Kingdom of Jerusalem and Europe by marrying his younger sister, Sibylla, to a French aristocrat, Guy of Champagne. Even though he had given up his power, Baldwin still tried to fight for the interests of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. He even continued to be involved in the war against Salahuddin Ayyubi, although no longer directly. In 1184, he managed to recapture the city of Gilead from Muslim troops. Baldwin IV's health continued to deteriorate, and after having ruled Jerusalem for 10 years, he died on March 16, 1185, at the age of 24. Salahuddin Ayyubi heard the news of the death of his friend, and as a final tribute to Baldwin IV, Salahuddin Ayyubi even allowed the king's funeral in Jerusalem, an act rarely done in the Crusades. After the death of Baldwin IV, the Kingdom of Jerusalem fell to the incompetent King Guy de Lusignan. This sparked the Hattin War in 1187, where Muslim troops led by Salahuddin Ayyubi succeeded in defeating Jerusalem Christian troops led by King Guy de Lusignan. The war began when Muslim forces laid siege to the city of Tiberias in Galilee, where Jerusalem's Christian forces were based. Christian forces led by King Guy de Lusignan tried to relieve Tiberias, but they were captured by the stronger Muslim forces and besieged at Hattin and forced to surrender. After the defeat of the Christian forces, Salahuddin Ayyubi took Jerusalem without a fight and King Guy de Lusignan fled to Acre. This incident led to the collapse of the Kingdom of Jerusalem and ended the existence of a Christian state in Palestine for nearly a century. However, the Battle of Hattin did not completely eradicate Christian presence in the Middle East, as Acre remained an important base for Christian armies for the following decades. Efforts to recapture Jerusalem continued by Christian leaders such as Richard I of England. The Third Crusade eventually reclaimed some Christian territories in the Middle East, but Jerusalem remained in Muslim hands until recently. From the discussion above, it can be concluded that King Baldwin IV was a very famous and talented leader in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Despite suffering from severe leprosy, he still led troops in battle and was honored for his bravery. In addition, he was known as a figure who was tolerant towards Muslims, which was a rare move by Christian leaders at the time. The good relations between Salahuddin Ayyubi and Baldwin IV reflect the importance of diplomacy in maintaining peace and reducing conflicts between countries of different religions and cultures. Baldwin IV left behind good policies and memories during his very short reign. So guys, this is the discussion about King Baldwin IV. Hopefully it can add to our knowledge about history and leadership in the past, especially in the context of the Crusade and the battle between the Kingdom of Jerusalem and Muslim troops. Hopefully we can take valuable lessons from Baldwin IV's leadership and the ways he faced challenges. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.